Okay. Hey there, guys. So, this is going to be a little bit different than some of the videos that I have posted recently, um, especially in regards to what I share as far as on YouTube. Um, what I want to go over today is something that is really, I think, crucial to talk about and really to go over. Um, And I know you guys who have followed me recently have likely followed me for fitness related content. And this is not this is a one off video in a way. But I would really like to sort of share more on this topic that I'm going to be discussing. And what I'm going to be going over today and really talking about is basically my coming out story again. So, if you're not aware, I've done one of these videos before, and where I'm sitting right now is actually the first. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna try to make this unfiltered. This is actually where I first recorded my coming out video when I was around 18 or 19. I have the screenshot to that video, but I don't have the video here on YouTube. I deleted it years ago. So this is going to be a new video because I'm now 30 years old and I feel it's important to, I think it's just as important today telling this story for anybody who is going through something similar. Um, so I want to share my story. And I think I've went through a lot of life experience since making that first video around 18 or 19. So I want to go ahead and really talk about my coming out story and talk about where I'm at today. So, if you're not aware, I knew that I was gay at around 13. And I actually came out when I was in high school. I had told a close friend that I was gay, and she, of course, was fine with me. But word had spread around the school about it, of course, and it wasn't because of her. It had nothing against her. She's still my close friend. I still talk to her. She's one of the closest friends I've had eh, throughout my whole life. And so it did spread around the school that I was gay. And in middle school, that's very hard. I mean, of course, everybody's likely been through middle school at this point. Anybody who's watching this, and it was a hard time. It was a hard time for me. I remember it very vividly what I went through. I was bullied. I remember having gym class being called a faggot. I remember, being called, or telling people, these guys telling me that I had tidy whities on and this and that. I was just, I was a quiet kid. I was a very shy and quiet kid when I was in school. I didn't really talk to anybody. I was just kind of staying to myself, and that's just how I was. Um, and so after that, and going into high school, I kind of tried to suppress a little bit about what I went through in middle school and try not to make it, as a parent. There was a lot of things that happened in high school that I really wanted to be a part of. I remember in high school, I wanted to actually set up a gay straight alliance at our school. I remember it never did happen at that time. This was like back in 2012, 2011, somewhere in there, where I'd wanted to set up like a GSA at school, but it never became a thing. Um, there was a club that I was a part of in school that was called P Cubed, which was positive peer pressure, and that was what I was a part of at that time in school, and I was trying to get involved with that. one thing I really was struck with whenever I was in school is that I wanted to do something regarding like anti-bullying. That was a big thing with me, you know, at that time, and I think it still is a big thing. I think it's still relevant today as it was back in 2011, 2012. One thing too that I do want to mention, you know, because I kind of got ahead of myself. When I had came out at, in like middle school, that was around 2008. And what I did want to share there before I continue on with what I mentioned with high school is that in 2008, there was a lot of things going on. I remember at that time, um, I had kind of came out in sort of the MySpace era. That was kind of the time that I came out. MySpace was really big at that time in 2008. And I remember having like a rainbow background on my profile at one time on my MySpace. And I just remember the same night looking at that profile, and I remember coming out to my mom that night. And I remember also around that time that you had the show Prayers for Bobby, which is or it was a movie, I should say, which was a big thing with me. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies. It was only on Lifetime. You can still watch it, of course, but it was a Lifetime movie that they had at the time, and I remember watching it. And a lot of things too that had happened at that time was the Proposition 8 that was in California. This was all at around the same time, in regards to like gay marriage. I remember vividly that time. Again, I know that's been a while, it's 2008, but I still remember everything that was going on at that time and what I was going through. Going back to high school, I just wanted to share that because I got ahead of myself a little bit there. And I'm trying to do this as unfiltered as possible and make it, of course, as real as possible because I don't want to edit this. Um, but in high school, like I mentioned, I was involved in a club that was positive peer pressure. Um, Even though I wanted to get involved with anti bullying, I tried not to bring up my sexuality really that much in high school. I tried to suppress it from how it was when I was in middle school. Even though I remember at the time having a Lady Gaga, um, the album cover in my binder in high school, and I had the Lady Gaga Heartbeats headphones as well when I was in high school. So that was kind of me, and it pretty much still is me to this day. After high school, I really started to come into my own, I would say. Um, I started to understand myself a little bit more and who I am, who I was. And at that time, you know, when I was 18 or 19, one of my close friends, she had moved away. And of course, after high school, it's just like everything is like you're just kind of starting from scratch. You don't know where you're going next. It's just how it is when you get out of high school. You have this whole structured life when you're in school for like, you know, from kindergarten to 12th grade, and then everything just kind of is just thrown out there to you. And so that's how it was, of course, after high school. It was a very weird time. Those last few, like the year or so after I'd graduated, it was a very odd time for me. I felt a little bit isolated. I didn't have my friend with me who was really close, you know, throughout high school. She had been my closest friend for the longest, and not having her there was very hard on me because she was somebody who had always supported me. We were always close friends. Everybody thought we were dating, and we never dated. We always told everybody we were just close friends. And so she had moved at that time. And from there, you know, I went to college. I went to a community college locally, and I really, you know, I was trying to figure myself out at the time. A lot of things too that I did is I was going into church. A lot of the reasons that I went into church was because of my sexuality. That was probably the number one thing on why I went to church was because of that. And I really, struggled a lot. And I remember at times when I was in church and I did try to bring up, the sexuality issue, and it was just hard. I had times where I was in a youth group and I just have really bad memories that just have stuck with me for a long time. And I just felt like some stuff shouldn't have been said to me the way they were said, especially, at the age I was at. And so, I will get more into church as I continue on with this video, but I did want to mention that I was in church for quite a bit, and that was a lot of the reasons why I went was because of the issue of my sexuality. So continuing on, I got into college and I really started to embrace myself a little bit more and sort of understand myself and really sort of explore more. I only went to community college for a few years, or maybe it was like a year. It was very short lived because I dropped out because I was not doing really well in some of the classes, and I just dropped out. And so beyond that, I'd got into I'd always been somebody who's artistic. I drew a lot when I was younger, and I still draw a little bit today. And one thing that I really enjoyed doing for a while was photography. I was really big with photography. I think I still am to an extent because I still enjoy taking pictures and doing videos. But one thing I do want to say as well is that I went to art school for a short time. I did it for about 2 or 3 years. I didn't graduate. I dropped out of art school too, but I was doing digital photography in school. And at that time, I was living, outside of my hometown, and I was traveling a lot to Nashville, and I kind of explored, a little bit more. Um, Another thing I do want to mention too is that I'd went to my first gay pride a few years after I'd graduated from high school, and it really brought a lot out of me, and it really solidified a lot of things that I was thinking, about myself, and really made me realize, more of who I am. And I remember, going to my first skate bar. Um, I want to kind of keep things a little bit discreet with what I mentioned, but I remember, going to my first skate bar, Gay Pride, and I just really remember how, at that time when I went to my first skate bar, um, I remember how mesmerized I was when I first went. And at this bar, they had go-go boys and, of course, drag queens. I'd never, at that time, I hadn't seen drag queens. And even like at that time, I was sort of getting into, RuPaul's Drag Race, and I was really getting into Drag Race around the time, but I never really went out. And I remember going out, and I remember how mesmerized I was at, just the Go-Go Boys and just the drag queens, just the environment. I really remember that. I remember walking through there, like I can remember it like yesterday. And I just remember how I felt. And so, even after going through, going to a gay pride and, a gay bar, I still dealt with a lot of self hatred a lot of times in my life. Beyond that, I had moved to California. Like I mentioned, when I had dropped out of art school, I moved to California. I moved to California because this was a place I always wanted to go. And I stayed out there for roughly 3 years and really sort of again, it was a self discovery for me. I drove out there in my car that I had when I was in high school, and I drove across the country. I didn't do a plane when I drove out. I put what I could in my car and I drove. And I know that sounds like a cliche type story to tell, but that was true. I had a close friend who, rode with me as I drove back because I didn't want to drive that long of a drive alone. And so I did. I took what I could and I drove and I left my hometown from there. Like I said, I stayed in Los Angeles. I went to California, but I lived in, Los Angeles in particular. I lived in Burbank and North Hollywood. Um, and whenever, I was out there, I had a close friend who was with me. And I really, kind of came into my own, trying to, discover myself. I did do gay porn. That's something that I, a lot of people look down at me because of it. It's something I enjoy. So, I just, it's something that I enjoy. And regardless if somebody looks down upon me, it was a way, and I still think it is a way to express my sexuality in a lot of different, you know, a lot of different ways. And so I did do that when I was in California. And really, it was all about discovery. I really enjoyed it there. I still have fond memories when I was there. I had a close friend who used to take me to the LGBT center. I remember, another thing too that I could go into detail with, but again, it would be a really long video, is I went through a lot of anxiety and depression with a lot of the self hatred that I've had. Um, really trying to conform to a lot of the ideas and beliefs of my, you know, family, and it's hard. And another thing too that I do want to mention is, I stayed out there for 3 years. I'd moved back home in 2020. Um, and before that, I was a pretty, I'm going to get a little bit into politics, but I don't want to offend anybody with anything that I say. I don't, this is one thing that I'm worried about mentioning, but I think it's important to mention. I don't want to offend anybody at all. But at the time, my views have shifted here recently. Over the past few years, I had voted, Republican. And a lot of the reasons why I did and why I'd voted for Donald Trump is to conform with the ideas of my family. Um, and to try to be the ideal person for them. Again, I grew up in a system of beliefs, where it's not a good thing if you're gay. Um, so a lot of the reasons why I tried to shift my political views, because even like before, I was very Democrat and very liberal minded, and I've always really been that type of person. But I try to shift my politics to conform with them, um, and I feel really guilty about it. And I know I'm probably going to get judgment for what I say for this, but I just, my views have shifted, and I just, I don't, I just want to live for me. I don't want to vote against myself. I don't want to, try to conform to everybody else's beliefs. So, I've tried to make it as much of a priority to contribute to, more LGBT causes. And I'm including the T as well, because I think that we all have to be included. I think we need to understand each other more. And I think we need to really take time to step back and understand what everybody's going through. Um, and that's the reason why I wanted to mention that. I would try to contribute to a lot of LGBT causes here recently since coming out again. And I just feel guilty in a lot of ways. But I'm trying to really correct things and do the right thing. Um, so it's been hard. There's a lot of internal hate. There's a lot of, internal homophobia that I've had. So I've had to deal with a lot of that. And on top of, having to go through therapy for years, having to be on medication at the same time, taking 3 different medications. Um, I'm doing well. I don't want you to think that I'm, not doing well. I'm doing well. This is just something I think needs to be said. Um, Even though it's hard for me, I know this is just something I wanted to share. My coming out has been a long journey over these past 30 years that I've been alive. There's a lot that I've experienced, a lot of very beautiful moments, and a lot of very hard moments. But I think it's important for us to talk about this. And I apologize. I think it's important for us to talk about this and to really take time to, you know, accept ourselves. So this is my coming out video. again, um, again, guys, I'm Brennan Parton, 30 years old. I am a gay man, and that's a little bit about my story. I could share more, but again, guys, I really appreciate your support, your love. It means a lot. I've been able to reconnect with a lot of good friends. And sometimes I don't feel like I deserve it, but I'm thankful. Um, so, again, guys, thank you for watching. I know this is a long one, and I apologize. I try to make things short. There's a lot more that I could tell, but this is a little bit about my story. So thank you guys again. Of course, I will still share fitness content, but I felt this was important to share. Thank you guys.